Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Michelle Gert and I'm the chair of the Women's Leadership Forum at the Orthopedic Research Society. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for the webinar Women Should Ask. It is sponsored by the ORS Women's Leadership Forum and the Awards and Recognition Committee. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the ORS website. You will be notified via email when it's ready for viewing. All webinar participants will be muted during the presentation. However, if you have any questions, please type them into the questions or chat box on the right side of your screen. We will address the questions at the end of the presentation. Your questions will remain anonymous, and should we not have time to finish and go through all the questions, we will provide answers to you via a Microsoft document later in the month. Speaking today is Dr. Susanna Chubinskaya. Susan Chubinskaya is a Ciba-Geigy Professor of Biochemistry and is the endowed chair at Rush University Medical Center. She is also Associate Provost for Academic Affairs at Rush. In this role, Susan oversees faculty affairs and deals with many issues relevant to faculty life in academia, such as promotion and tenure, professional and career advancement, annual reviews, mentoring, gender equity, and diversity. She is also a member of the Program and Faculty Development Committee at the Group on Faculty Affairs of the American Association of Medical Colleges. And in such capacity, she is exposed to conversations across the country regarding the challenges and opportunities that faculty face. As a researcher, Susan is an internationally recognized expert in the field of growth factors and bone morphogenic proteins and cartilage repair and regeneration. The focus of her current research is post-traumatic osteoarthritis and biologic approaches to cartilage repair. She is continuously funded by NIH, pharmaceutical companies, and biotech companies. She has been a member of the ORS since 1993, and she has served on multiple ORS committees and has been a topic chair. Currently, she is the chair of the Awards and Recognition Committee and a member of the ORS Annual Meeting Committee Council. She has published 8 book chapters, 75 peer-reviewed articles, and more than 170 peer-reviewed abstracts. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Chubinskaya.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to thank all the listeners for being interested in the subject of our conversation. I recognize many familiar names of friends and colleagues in the audience, and I'm honored that you found the time in your busy schedule to be part of this webinar. I also would like to thank the ORS, Professional Development and Mentoring Council, and the Women's Leadership Forum for this opportunity to speak to you today. So the objectives of this webinar is to identify potential factors that may lead to gender inequity in the workplace, to empower you with statistical data obtained from the American Association of Medical Colleges, and to provide some tools that can help you to overcome your personal limitations as well as your potential issues in your professional life. I would like to stop for a minute and allow the listeners to reflect the title of the book that this seminar is based on, and the title of the book is Women Don't Ask. Can you remember a situation when you did not try to negotiate or were afraid of asking? I am sure you can, and so can I. Nothing in life is straightforward, and a straight path is not necessarily the quicker one. Facing the barriers and challenges makes us stronger and prepares for life challenges. It is an important experience that you learn along the way. Furthermore, it is important to remember that every person has a unique path, and as long as the goal is clear, that's what is important. Especially considering multiple tasks and responsibilities that female faculty face nowadays. In addition to having a full load at work, they have to deal with family, children, spouses, career, elderly care, and many, many other issues. I would like to bring a few quotes from famous people to empower you. As Charles Darwin said, it's not the biggest, the brightest, or the best that will survive, but those who adapt the quickest. We need to learn how to adapt to any given situation, and as quicker we do it, as better. Margaret Thatcher said that any woman who understands the problem of running a home will be nearer to understanding the problems of running a country. This quote really emphasizes that women can do anything and be in charge of big decisions and be up for big tasks and responsibilities. Women should not have doubts whether they are capable of stepping up in their roles. What about women in leadership? It has been shown in many fields, including medicine, the social disadvantage of women is concentrated lack of access to power and authority. Women not generally devalued, but regarded as deficient in qualities needed to exercise power. Despite women's progress in entering professional careers, gender equity remains an elusive goal. Is discrimination still a problem? Studies of wages, hiring, and promotion indicate that gender gaps still exist. And by the way, that if you're looking for average mean of salaries in your specialties, those data are available on AAMC website, and AAMC stands for American Association of Medical Colleges. So those data should be available to you, and you should be able to use them in your negotiations. This slide shows, and data which I'm showing here are taken from the latest publication from AAMC, that women still remain underrepresented. If you look at the lower rank, there is no difference in women and men representation, especially at the lower ranks or instructor ranks. And as you go with faculty ranking from assistant professor to full professor, you could see that the number of women in these positions is much smaller than men, and it increases, the difference increases, the gap increases as we move to the full professor level. This figure shows you 5-year comparison of women representation in permanent leadership position. And though numbers have been changed since 2006, it is still very low, especially at the leadership positions. You can see that only department chairs are women comprise of only 11–14%. And it's more women at the level of assistant deans, those who are doing the job. And then as you go with senior position, the number of women in these leadership positions is drastically increased. The numbers of women deans in the medical schools in this figure are 12%, but since the last year this number has been changed to 17%. But women still remain unrepresented in leadership positions. It is important to understand that a true long-term advancement and success can be often limited by our actions and our perceptions. And those are listed here. It can be limited by your personality, your inability to deal with challenges, public and your own perceptions, inability to sell yourself, fear of failure, and lack of proactive behavior. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to these issues that have been identified. Are there any assumptions that hold you back? How many times and how many of you thought that it is selfish to put myself first? If I work hard, I'll be noticed and appreciated. That I have to know my subject matter before I comment or interview for my next position. I stay away from politics and will focus only on my job. However, you can't be effective if you haven't taken care of yourself first. It is your responsibility to make your work visible. Nobody will do it for you. Even if you don't know all facts, but based on your general knowledge, common sense, and experience, you can have educated opinion. Also, in order to be successful in organization, you need to be politically savvy. Otherwise, you will quickly lose your allies and your job. So again, I'm coming back to this point that our own personalities often can prevent us from moving forward. Women often have lower self-esteem, which leads to setting less ambitious, less aggressive goals and safe targets, which eventually result in lower salaries, delayed promotions, delayed career advancement. This famous book that I used as a background for this seminar is named Women Don't Ask. And the research has shown that women don't ask for higher salaries, better job opportunities, new responsibilities, additional training opportunities, raises, promotions. Women don't ask to be recognized for their work. Women are afraid of asking for flexible work hours. They even don't ask for help at home. And sometimes they don't know that change is possible. That fear that asking may damage their relationship or prevent them from getting the job, assignment, etc. is not real fear and should not be the case. Sometimes they worry that society can react badly to women asserting their own needs and desires. A study by Babak 2002 showed that 20% of women which were polled for this study had never negotiated at all in any of their situations. There is a dramatic difference between men and women in their propensity to negotiate for what they want. Can you believe 20% of us had never even thought of negotiating? Ideally, negotiation should be seen as a collaborative process aimed at finding the best solutions for everyone involved. Because bottom line, what you're trying to negotiate your usefulness for the organization. The work lives of women physicians, when it compared to male physicians, has shown that women are more satisfied with their specialties, with patient and colleague relationship, time pressure in ambulatory settings, and they have 1.6 times more burnouts. And women less have control over their work. They're less satisfied with autonomy, relationships with community, less satisfied with pay, resources. They have less control in the day-to-day operations, and their income is less. So gender differences exist in both the experience and satisfaction with medical practice. And again, those data are taken from peer-reviewed publications. Women frequently feel unsure about what they deserve, worry that asking for too much may threaten a relationship, or fear that people around them will react badly if they ask for too much. Women are also less optimistic than men about what they can get from negotiation. They are less comfortable than men with risk-taking and often lack confidence in their negotiating ability, making them ask only for things that will be easy to get. And I'm sure that as I go, that all of you can relate to situations when you had similar feelings. Here's one example on the importance of negotiation when it comes to salary. And again, it is taken from the same book. So what has been done, men and women were taken at the age of 22 with hypothetical job. First offer salary was $25,000 a year. And women have tendency to take what they offered. But men always try to negotiate. And let's say that man was able to negotiate this first offer and have it, instead of $25,000 a year, negotiate to $30,000 a year. Let's assume that each of these men and women were given raise 3%, and by the age of 60, the difference in salaries between men and women would be about $15,000. However, since man was making more along with his extra earning over 38 years of employment, given the situation that they stayed within the same job, the overall extra money men would make would be more than $300,000. If the man simply banks the difference every year in savings account, earning 3% interest, by the age of 60, he would have more than $500,000 than women. So basically, more than $500,000 was simple return on investment for a single negotiation. Can you believe that? It seems to us that 25,000 when you start is not going to affect your outcome, your salary, your income by the end of your career. But you can simply see from this example that 5,000 difference at the beginning and ability to negotiate makes a huge difference along the line. Applicants, it has been shown by the study from HRs that applicants with identical experience and performance records but different salary histories are rated differently by employers. If your compensation record is better than others, employers will assume that your job performance is better too. Accepting less will imply that you have less value than other new hires. In many cases, employers actually respect candidates more for pushing to get paid what they're worth. Recent changes in workplace culture are making it essential for women to exercise far more control over their careers than in the past. Are there women in the pipeline? And as you guess, there are. If you look at these charts from AAMC, you can see that there's equal number of applicants to the medical schools, especially nowadays. Among residents, it's almost 1-to-1 ratio, and then the difference is increasing. And you can see that, as I mentioned earlier, that with leadership positions, there is less women leaders, but there's plenty of us at the level of incoming workforce. It's the level of medical students, residents, and assistant professors. So what can we do in order to change this situation? There are a few quotes that I would like to bring you here, and then I'll elaborate on these quotes. One is that all animals except men know that the principal business of life is to enjoy it. And a man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. The importance of these quotes are in the following. The faculty should enjoy what they do. Even if one does not like the job or is not satisfied with it, he or she should find positive aspects of it. If none of it can be found, then it is better to move on and to look for a different job, either within the same institution or outside. Important to remember in your career and professional development, in searching for more opportunities, you should still enjoy what you do or do what you enjoy. Otherwise, the job will not be satisfactory, regardless the amount of money you make or the title you have. However, you need to set ambitious goals and strategically approach them. Without ambitious goals, it is hard to advance in your career and your life. Here are some recommendations which were provided and published in academic medicine, which are aimed to reduce the application of bias that could disadvantage women applicants in hiring settings. It was recommended that you would provide evidence of communal job-related behaviors, being that you need to demonstrate that you are helpful and sensitive to the needs of subordinates. You need to be able to indicate clear evidence of competency, resume, third-party endorsement, but avoid appearing self-promoting in an interview. Actually, third-party endorsement is very important, and it is recommended especially when you apply for high leadership positions. During your interview, you should not show anger or discuss previous job-related situations that made you angry. And what also was recommended, and it is a point which can be discussed further, you need to avoid revealing parenthood status until job and salary are secured, because you never know what kind of climate you might be interviewed for. In your initial application, if you have a female gendered first name, consider using initials only. Consider removing or limiting gender identifying information. Strive for an attractive but neutral appearance for interviews or application photographs. Avoid interviewing in overly feminine clothing. If you are visibly pregnant, it might be wise to obscure it with your clothing. Another important recommendation is avoid tentative speech patterns. Use of intensifiers such as really and definitely, hedges such as I guess, sort of, and hesitation such as well, let's see. Don't be a victim. Be in charge of your life. You always need to be able to define objectives in your academic life. You need to be strategic in what you do. You need to have strategic approach to your career. You always need to be able to identify yourself in a job, career, and life phases. And it can be different as your time of employment is going forward. You need to become your own best mentor. You need to locate yourself on a leadership continuum. You need to be able to review and share insights on career transitions. And you need to be ready for next step in your strategic career plan. While you're in a job, whether you just started your new job or you already have been on your job, you need to have short-term and long-term goals and visions. If you just starting your job as a junior faculty, prepare 2 5-year vision. Prepare annual goals and objectives. Always try to have a conversation with your department chair or division chief and make sure that your short-term and long-term objectives are aligned with objectives and vision of your leadership and your department. You need to be able to manage your career because your career is yours and nobody else's, and you know better what you want and what you want to achieve. You need to be able to identify internal and external resources which might help you along the way. You need to be able to develop your own advisory board, and you need to stay focused, whatever you do and whatever you plan to do. Unfortunately, there is often situations when new hires, junior faculty come to a job, they try to be involved into every single committee and every single task, and it prevents them from being focused on what they really hired for, or being focused and strategic in trying to move forward with their promotion. Again, please keep that in mind. Don't let yourself be in this situation. Don't try to be spread thin and be involved in everything. You need to be strategic in the committees that you are choosing to be part of. You need to be part of the committees, but choose the most powerful ones and not the most time-consuming. You need to be able to assess your risk at your job and be able to decrease your risks. So when you're assessing your risk in a job, you need to make sure that your skills are state-of-the-art. And if they're not, you need to look for opportunities to improve them. You need to be able to assess whether your role is essential for the department and for the institution. You need to consider and think and ask yourself, can I be easily replaced? And you always need to be able to prove your experience is worth the cost and make sure it is valued. How you can decrease your risk in a job? You need to be able to offer what others don't have. So if there is some new skills that you can develop which would benefit your department, go for it. You need to make sure that your boss supports you, because without the support of your immediate boss or your departmental boss, it's very hard to advance within the department and within the institution. You need to make sure that your successes are visible, and you can use different situations to make it visible. For example, you can just bump into your boss in the hallway, and if you received a new grant or you publish a new paper, mention it to him. Or you can write a short email saying, by the way, I would like to share with you such a great news which I have. Make sure that he or she is aware of your successes. You need to be able to cultivate a network of followers and supporters, and you need to be able to keep your portfolio up to date. I cannot stress out more how important to keep your CV up to date. Whatever happens to you today, whether you submitted abstracts to the ORS, or you submitted a new paper, or you submitted your grant, put it in your CV. If it's got rejected, you can always delete it from your CV. But if you don't put it today, you'll forget. If you give a lecture, put it down in your CV. It's easy to reformat, but it's much more difficult to remember everything what you have done. And believe me, I meet daily with faculty, and I realize how little information they put on their CV, and it takes months and months for them to remember and to collect all the information. So please keep your portfolio up to date. The concept of mentoring has changed over the years, and there's a new understanding of mentoring in this century. It's basically called personal mosaic of influences, experts, and guides. It doesn't matter how well people trained. Few can sustain their best performance on their own. That's where coaching comes in. And that's where collaboration, partnership, and interprofessional partnership comes into play. So now it's called personal mosaic of mentoring model. And as you can see, that it's really a set of different people who might be your mentors. And don't forget that at the same time, all of us play a role of mentors and mentees. You need someone who can be your cheerleader. It doesn't have to be at your work. It may be at home. It can be with your friends, but someone who would really always try to cheer you up and push you forward. You need to have someone who is a confidant that you can share your frustrations with. And probably it would be better if it's not from your immediate working environment, because not everyone is able to share the success of the colleagues. You need to have an expert that you would rely on, that you would be able to relate to, and you value their opinion. You need to have a coach. And again, it doesn't mean that all these roles have to be played simultaneously. It depends which phase of your career you're in or you're at. But the coach can be your peers, your superiors, your reports. You might have role models that you would want to look up for and that you would like to be similar to. And you need to have someone who is politically savvy within your institution or within your organization or within your professional organization, who also can guide you and help you to make the right decisions. You need to be more intentional with the roles and activities you take on. You need to be more goal-oriented and aware of the situation, and you need to be able to negotiate, because it becomes a win-win situation when needs on both sides are met. Here is the advice which was provided by women who hold high leadership positions, deans and department chairs, who went through executive leadership training through AAMC, and those approaches which were provided by these women. They would say, you need to find a mentor. You should not be afraid to ask for help and advice. Networking is absolutely critical, and it can be both professional, within professional organizations, within department, within the institution, outside the institution, but networking is absolutely crucial. You need to be on powerful committees, those where your role will be visible, and those committees where you can interact with leaders, finance committees, faculty promotions committee, faculty councils. Women are easily sidelined and get into committees. They won't help them advance through the academic ranks. And don't get me wrong, these committees are important, for example, like IRB committees or some other committees of that nature. But you need to really be strategic and decide which stage of your career you're at and see whether that committee would really help you to advance. You need to be able to avoid petty disputes and always have the last word. Fight to speak without interruptions. Even if you're at the highest leadership meetings, try to make your point heard and try to get the last word, whether you chair the committee or not. And please remember, no path is straight, and you need to enjoy the process. Thank you for your attention, and now I think we are ready for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Chubinskaya, for sharing your insight and expertise with us today. I would like to remind participants that if you have any questions, please type them into the chat or the questions box on the right side of your screen. I will be moderating this part of the session to see if you have any questions. There is one question which I will read out for Dr. Chubinskaya. And also, I have one other question myself, but we'll start with this one. Can you provide suggestions for job application when a department is looking to improve gender balance, increase women faculty?
So can you please repeat the question?
Sure. Can you provide suggestions for job application when a department is looking to improve gender balance and increase women faculty?
Right. So one comment which I would like to make, that you don't want to be hired only because you're a woman. You want to have equal opportunities, and you would like to be hired as an expert, right? So that is always important to keep in mind, because the worst what can happen that we would be hired just to make quote of number of women within that department. Of course, it becomes an issue, especially in the orthopedic field, which is still male-dominated, but there's no field that women would not succeed and would not be successful. So you really need to be able to offer unique skill sets which would be valued by this department, and not only because you're a woman.
Excellent, thank you. I have another question. Should you have the same mentor over a long period of time, or should that person change over time?
And it depends. It really depends. You might have the same mentor, but I would not limit to one mentor. There's an interesting conversation now at the WMC, mentor versus sponsor. And sponsor doesn't mean financial sponsor. Mentors remain behind the scenes. Mentor who you can seek advice from, mentor who can guide you, and sponsors are those who will publicly promote you. If you stay with the same mentor, you might limit the broadness of the situation, and you might need maybe different opinions. So I don't mean that you probably would change the mentor, but maybe to add another aspect of a mentorship and bring another one into the play as additional one, unless you feel that you exhausted your mentee-mentor relationship. And let's face that not every mentor is a good mentor, and not
okay,
every
thank you. Susan, could you please go to the first evidence-based slide?
Yes, 1 second. It is when we, yes, when we recommend how to be, this one, right? Let me, okay.
I was hoping to perhaps start a conversation with the attendees regarding some of these recommendations, and maybe some of the attendees can... Hello?
Yes?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a question that seems to be related to that. You mentioned that hide your feminine name and write initials and hide your pregnancy.
Right.
If this is true, when do you have real equality? That's exactly why I wanted to, thank you to that person who submitted the question. That's why I wanted to bring this slide up, because I do think it, actually I think it's the next slide.
Okay.
The previous slide,
the
Susanna.
next slide.
Sorry, the previous one.
Okay.
Yeah, this, oh, you were right, I'm sorry.
So let me comment. So first of all, those recommendations are taken from publication in 2009.
Right.
When you send your application, and I'm not saying that I agree with each of those, when you send your application out, you don't know who is going to first review this application. And if the person is not gender neutral, if the person who reviews your application still has his or her bias, you don't want that to influence you being called for an interview. Because interview is the best opportunity for you to show your strengths and to be able to communicate what you can bring to a job. So this recommendation is basically to eliminate or to limit potential bias that might exist. You cannot change all people's mind, and people still, some people are still biased. So doing it more gender neutral might increase your chances to be called for the interview. In terms of pregnancies and in terms of parenthood status, again, if you apply to academic job, it is basically illegal even to ask about your parental status and about your family situation. But some of you might be applying to male-dominated private practices. And again, someone who has the wife staying home, taking care of children, or who is not exposed to nowadays situation and nowadays concept, not only concept, but nowadays gender equity fights that we all have. And again, trying to kind of minimize potential bias, you hope that during the interview you would be able to prove that you should be hired not because you're a woman, or you should not be hired because you're pregnant, but you're bringing a unique set of skills that will add to the job and which will add to this practice. So again, those recommendations are given to women to increase their chances to get a job and to be hired. Though
Excellent.
we agree with it or not.
If anyone has any comments again regarding that or further questions regarding those recommendations, we'd be happy to have more input and comments. I do have another question for you, Susan. Sometimes it is difficult to get a position in a powerful committee when you are early in your career.
Right.
For example, only full professors can be on the promotion committee.
Right.
It seems that the people who are eligible for these positions already have some career success.
So let me comment on that. And that's where sponsors are coming in. To my understanding, that promotion committees in every medical school in the country, including Canada, should have diverse representation of faculty at different ranking. So if it's not the case, which I'm not familiar with, it is a good point to bring for discussion and maybe review the policies. Also, you need to have your spokespeople who would promote you in terms of placing you in the powerful committees. Sponsors so will. So maybe you can align with women who are at higher ranking and who would be willing to put your name forward. Many institutions have either the offices which deal with gender equities or women committees or some other offices within faculty affairs or academic affairs which are looking at women issues. So that is a good question and the good point to bring for conversation and really ask for mentors, sponsors, supporters among women at higher ranking and ask for their help in order to be placed in these higher level positions.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. Advice on how best to answer illegal questions, that's in quotations, about marital or parental status. How do we, if you're asked those questions and you know it's illegal but you've been asked it, what do you do?
I would just say that I'm sorry, but I'm not going to answer this question since it is a legal question. I would just say that. Okay. Because there are clear guidelines which questions can be asked and which questions cannot be asked during the interview.
Is that true across all, industry and medicine and graduate schools?
I would say yes. Of course, I cannot speak for private practice or private offices, but in academic institutions and industry, those are clear questions that cannot be asked. And you can just say that I refuse to provide an answer to these questions because it is illegal questions.
Okay, thank you. I have another question or comment. Sometimes assertive women are viewed more negatively than assertive men. Thus, should we actually be concerned about how our employers or managers perceive us when we ask for more?
And you're absolutely right, and that's the irony of women being in leadership, and actually this situation is recognized and published, and there's a lot of publications about these issues. I think that we still need to be assertive, and as long as we know that we are doing the right thing, I would not worry how we are perceived, because men are not worried how they are perceived. As long as we're doing the right job, the good work, and we know that we are fair, and we have applied the same principle across. So again, when you ask for more responsibilities, you might use the situation justifying why you're asking for that, and maybe show what kind of unique skills you can provide. But I mean, I am considered to be assertive, and honestly, it doesn't bother me.
I agree. Okay, sometimes your mentor promises lots of things when you are hired but never keeps up the promises. What do we do about that when your mentor is not effective?
Yes, and I hear that all the time. So there are a few things. Again, if you're hired and you are offered or promised a number of things, try to get it in writing. If you don't get it in writing, my recommendation is after this conversation, come back to your office and send email to the person you had the conversation and say, let me summarize the essence of our conversation. We agreed on ABC. Did I capture it right? And at least you'll have it in writing. Second of all, if mentor, when you're hired and things are offered, but again, you are not getting any support for that, try to meet with the person who you report to and discuss the resources which might be available to you. If not now, what needs to be done that those resources would be available. If mentor is not effective, you can do two things. One, you can try to find another mentor, even from the different discipline, as long as the mentor has, and it depends what kind of mentor, whether it is research mentor, whether it is teaching mentor, whether it is mentor of academic life, and you can try to find someone with broader understanding, or you can try to have a conversation with the mentor and say, how can we get this relationship working? Because those relationships would benefit both of us. And you can try to provide the evidence how the mentor would benefit from those relationships as well, whether it would be joint projects, whether it would be joint publications, whether it would be some joint grants, because all of these things benefit both sides. And if you see that all of your efforts did not bring any results, I would try to identify a different mentor. But try not to complain about the previous mentor, because people talk to each other and you don't want to create negative aura around you.
Okay, those are great pieces of advice because we all run into similar situations in our lifetime and our careers. I have another question. It's a very good one. What are the most effective strategies for dealing with maternity leave when being reviewed for tenure or promotion?
And actually, it is a very good question, and there's a lot of national conversations about it, because some institutions have like time clock, tenure time clock. But now it's a very good time, because now it's a good time when life-work balance is discussed and work flexibilities are discussed. So again, you need to bring this question to start with HR and maybe with faculty promotion committee and see whether your institute, and maybe even the dean's office or someone in the position like my position is, associate provost, associate dean of faculty affairs or academic affairs, and ask whether there are policies which would allow this flexibility, because many institutions are forced now to have policies to count for maternity leave and to provide opportunities for women to have this break in their careers. But don't keep quiet. Try to identify what policies your institution has and see how it's applicable to you. But go to HR, go to the promotion committee, and go to offices like mine, faculty affairs or academic affairs or dean's offices. They should have policies, and if they don't have, you might identify some policies from AAMC and see that, and try to have this conversation at your place that your institution should be up to the speed with the new developments in the academic medicine.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's 3:45, but we are okay to go for another 15 minutes. Whoever can stay on and has more questions, there are definitely more questions to answer. Whoever has to leave, or if we don't finish answering all the questions, as I mentioned in the beginning, we will have a list of all your questions, and we will send you an email in the near future with answers, or the best answers.
And before people will adjourn, I would really like to thank for your attendance and your great questions.
Yes, thank you for everybody who was able to stay. And just to remind you also, this webinar is recorded, and it will be uploaded to the ORS website's mentoring section in the coming week. Okay, there's a couple of people have asked a similar question, and it did come up in my mind as well. Susan, how do you avoid appearing self-promoting in an interview but still sell yourself? What kind of techniques can you use?
Techniques which people use to, I mean, first of all, self-promoting is not a bad thing. And whether we like it or not, and some people are good in that, some people are bad in that. The best thing to self-promote and show your strengths, having a bullet point your key accomplishments. And I always recommend that to every faculty when they go for annual review with their chairs, whether you go for a job interview, you always need to show what you have accomplished, either in a previous job or in a previous year. Have it in a bullet point. Don't try to put everything there, but the key accomplishments. And if you're going for a job interview, maybe not only the key accomplishments, but how many people were impacted or how your accomplishments have impacted the success of the institution. In clear, abbreviated point, and that is a very strong message. Whether it's accomplishment of your own work or accomplishment of your office that you were leading, but bullet point of key accomplishments. That's what I'm doing right now as we speak, actually.
So just cold, hard facts. That's all you know. That's
exactly. And try not to put emotions. Right. Try not to put emotions. Just clear facts.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. There's a question. Do you have any suggestions for a very male-dominated field, which is orthopedics? Right. I'm in a department where I think I'm the only female junior PhD faculty surrounded by male MDs.
And it's not an easy one. But again, you need to be, I mean, not every man has a bias against women. So you need to be able to align yourself with men who are more open-minded, maybe partner, maybe collaborate. Try to show, again, what you can bring to the area, how important you are, and again, work in real facts. But and actually, to be honest with you, sometimes men are better sponsors for women than women. Because let's be honest that women jealousy exists. And sometimes men are more open to promote women. And I don't mean promote only through ranking, promote in the career. So try to identify your allies and your supporters among men. Not all of them are totally anti-female.
Right, and actually there was another comment or question from an attendee who asked whether we should only seek out female mentorship or if male mentorship should be sought as well. And based on your based on your response, it's the level of dedication to advocating for you as a person as opposed to the gender of the person.
And I'll share with you my experience. I always had men sponsors and mentors, and they were much more supportive of me than women.
Right. Okay, and I have a very interesting question. Recommendations for figuring out the climate or culture of a department or institution while still trying to protect yourself regarding marital status, parental status, such as during an interview. So basically, while you're interviewing or applying, how do you actually find out what the climate is? So you
can ask, does the department have work flexibility? First of all, when you're interviewed, let's say you're interviewed in the office of the department chair, you can even see the pictures on the walls. If it is pictures of the department, what kind of pictures are there? You can always see who is part of the interview team, whether women are part of the team. You can also ask what kind of policies does institution or department have in terms of work-life balance, sexual harassment, affirmative action, diversity, all of that. Because if some departments have these policies right up there, right on the walls, and you can see that those departments have much more welcoming climate. So a lot of things can be sensed during the interview. Of course, it depends where you're interviewed. You might ask what is done to promote junior faculty. what resources are available to junior faculty. And again, dependent how these answers are conducted, you can sense whether it's really open to female.
Okay, thank you.
Or even look, one more comment, you can even look at the list of residents and students. Because interviewing for clinical orthopedic department, you can ask, do you have residents, do you have fellows, can I see the list of those? And if it is only white male, you would sense what kind of climate is in this department.
Well, what do you think about just simple reputation of an institution or department? Is that valuable or
I'm not sure because of, again, where would you seek the reputation? Professional reputation you can seek, but it would not reflect on climate within the institution or within the department. I think if you ask for the list of residents and fellows, it might be a very good idea because you really would see who is there. Or to look, actually you can even, before even going for interview, you can go online and look the departmental information and see who constitutes the department, what kind of policies and statements are made, whether there is a diversity statement on the website of the department or institution. You can look at the composition of the dean's office, whether they have leadership positions on women issues, on diversity, on multicultural affairs. All of that would provide you indication about the climate of the institution and the department.
Okay, good. Thank you. And there's an interesting comment. Someone, one of the attendees, wrote in and asked or said, I think asking about pregnancy sometimes is allowed when pregnancy would interfere with doing the job. Are there instances when that is the case?
Honestly, I don't know, and probably the best people to address this question would be HR. Just for curiosity, I'm not aware. I just don't know.
Okay, thank you.
The same comment can be made disability, but again, it is a national conversation that disability should not be a barrier to perform the job. It is the job of the institution to make it possible.
Right. So exposure to radiation, or certain things would be dangerous for pregnancy.
And again, it's probably, I'm not sure if the question is asked not to discriminate but to accommodate, then it is fine. Because if the question is during hiring says that you probably don't want to be exposed to that, but can we accommodate you do something different until you will be able to. So you can, again, you can sense that they're trying to use it from accommodative standpoint versus discriminative.
Right. Excellent. Okay, thank you. I have a grad student who wrote in. As a grad student, I often found myself questioning whether my advisor simply was not a good mentor or whether there was an unrecognized gender bias. How do I understand if gender is an issue when oftentimes biases are not overt? So when it's just a gut feeling, when you think that maybe...
Right. Again, it may be like if you would look who were students of this advisor before, who this advisor aligns with, how this advisor communicates with other female members of the department or within institution, it can give you some ideas. It's hard to say without knowing exactly situation, but kind of try to put things in the context and see how this advisor interacts with others. And it depends how you define good mentor or bad mentor, because again, someone would see bad mentors who are pushing you too hard to succeed, or someone sees a bad mentor who just never meets with mentees. So again, you need, I mean, it's hard for me to comment without knowing exactly the situation, but you need to try to be objective in assessing all sides of the context of the situation.
Okay, thank you. There was an interesting question. Is there a limit to how many times per year, for example, you should try and negotiate? At what point do you seem greedy? Does it even matter if you seem greedy? Is greed viewed differently in males and females?
And it depends what you try to negotiate. If you are trying to negotiate salary, you don't do it more than once a year. if you try to negotiate resources or something else, what helps, and there's a lot of presentations and conversation on having difficult conversation. So if you're trying to negotiate or you are asking for something from your chair, it always helps if you come and say, okay, I'm willing to give this if you can match it or if you can help me to add something. It's always nice when you can do something and ask for matching rather than asking for everything. So it really depends what you're trying to negotiate for, whether you're trying to negotiate for position, for promotion, for salary. If it is for promotion, and let's say the chair says that you are not ready yet, then you need to say, okay, can you clarify and identify exactly what I need in order to be considered? And then when can we review it again and see whether I fulfill these requirements? Again, it is being strategic in trying to accomplish the goals. Because if chair says you're not ready, ask why. Help me to define my deficiencies and overcome them, or to get new experiences which would help me to get promoted.
Great. So essentially stick to facts.
Right. And ask, like, try to avoid just blank comments or blank no. Try to get them, please define why not.
Right.
And identify the stepping stone that I can get through in order to be considered.
So that you can take action.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, and one other interesting comment. It's difficult to hide your first name when you add your publication list. Excellent, excellent comment. And also you're Googled. So these recommendations were 2009. I guess it wasn't so different 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but now with social media and Twitter and Facebook and Google, it really is probably impossible to hide what your gender is.
Right, right.
So,
and as I said, that it's not my recommendations, and world is changing, and 4 years it's a huge difference. So again, it was just, and I don't know how many years was taken to collect these data, as you can guess, probably 10 years before they published. So things are changing, and I'm not saying that you need to take each of those recommendations into heart and just follow them, but at least something to consider, especially when you apply to high leadership jobs and when your CV is not provided or when you just put the letter of intent. I mean, it really depends what kind of job. But I agree with you that now with social media, it's almost impossible to hide. And maybe we shouldn't.
right. Okay, well, it's just about 4 o'clock, so I would just like to let all the participants know that if your question was not answered, or if you have any further questions, please email them to Yola, and the email address is lewsca@ors.org. And we will do our best we can to get your questions answered as soon as possible. And just to remind you again, the webinar will be uploaded to the ORS website's mentoring section, and you'll be notified via email when this recording is available. And you'll either find some other resources and programming for new investigators on that site. And finally, upon exiting this webinar, you'll be asked to complete a short evaluation. So please complete this and make any suggestions on how we can improve as we go forward, because your input is greatly appreciated. So again, thank you everyone for completing the survey, for being with us today, and a special thanks to Dr. Chiminskaya for your very insightful talk and your outstanding responses. And I've got lots of tricks and ideas for myself right now too, so I'm very appreciative.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.